The wind howled across the barren land, carrying with it the taste of sand and sorrow. The alien walked alone, her steps heavy, her eyes dull, her heart colder than the empty desert around her. She had been cast out, unwanted by her people, abandoned by those she once called family. Her skin bore strange marks, glowing faintly under the pale sun, a reminder of the clan that had turned their backs on her. For days, she had wandered without food, without water, searching for something she could not name. What she needed was not survival but belonging, yet belonging was the one thing she no longer had. In the distance, she saw movement, small and fragile. A human child, no older than 8 years, walked, alone with a small basket clutched to her chest. The alien stopped, uncertain, her sharp instincts warning her to stay hidden, but the girl saw her, wide, innocent eyes shining in the dusty light. Instead of fear, the child smiled, a smile so pure it cut through the alien's loneliness like a blade. "Are you lost?" the girl asked softly, her voice trembling only a little. The alien's throat tightened. No one had spoken to her with kindness in a very long time. "I am unwanted," the alien whispered, her voice rough. The girl tilted her head as if she did not understand the weight of that word. Then, with the innocence of a child, she said something that froze the alien where she stood. "You need a home. My father needs a wife. I need a mom." Her little voice carried no fear, only a strange kind of hope. The alien blinked, shocked, her chest tightening. She had expected rejection, perhaps a scream, perhaps a stone thrown her way. But instead, this small human offered her something she never thought she could have: a place, a family, a chance to belong. The alien knelt slowly, lowering her tall frame to the child's level. "Why would you say that to me?" she asked, her voice almost breaking. The girl looked into her strange, glowing eyes and answered simply, "Because you look sad, and my father looks sad too, and I don't like being sad." The alien's hands trembled, for she could not remember the last time anyone had cared how she felt. "Where is your father?" the alien asked carefully. The girl pointed toward the horizon, where smoke rose faintly into the sky. "Our home is there, in the small village," she said. "Come with me, I will show you." The alien hesitated, fear and hope battling inside her chest. Could this child really mean what she said? Or was this some cruel trick of fate, dangling belonging in front of her only to rip it away again? The girl reached out and took her hand without waiting for permission. Her small fingers were warm, fragile, human. The alien flinched at the touch, but she did not pull away. Step by step, she allowed herself to be led toward the smoke on the horizon. Each step was heavy with doubt, but also with something she had not felt in years: hope. As they walked, the girl spoke freely, as children often do. "My father is strong, but he is lonely. He does not laugh anymore," she said. "My mother died when I was very little, and he tries to take care of me, but he is always sad." The alien listened in silence, her heart aching in ways she could not explain. She had lost, too. She knew the emptiness of having no one. Perhaps this child had seen that same emptiness in her eyes. When the village came into sight, the alien slowed. Small houses stood close together, smoke rising from fires, people moving about with busy hands. It was a place of life, warmth, community, the very things she had been denied. But would they accept her? Or would they chase her away with fire and stone? Her chest tightened with dread. The little girl tugged her hand, urging her forward. "Don't be afraid," she said. "I will tell my father you are good." The alien almost laughed bitterly, for how could a child protect her from the hatred of humans? And yet, she followed, unable to break free from the tiny hand holding hers. When they reached the edge of the village, people stopped and stared. Voices rose, whispers turned into fearful shouts. "She's an alien!" Someone cried. Others stepped back. Some reached for tools, for weapons. The alien froze, every muscle tense. She had known this would happen. She had been foolish to hope. But before the first stone could be thrown, the little girl rushed forward, spreading her arms. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice high but firm. She is my friend. She is coming home with me. The villagers stared in shock, uncertain. The alien stood trembling, caught between fleeing and staying. Then a man stepped out of one of the houses, tall, strong, his face weathered with grief. The girl ran to him, tugging at his arm, pointing back at the alien. "Father, this is her," she said boldly. "She needs a home, and we need her." The man's eyes narrowed, his gaze falling heavy upon the alien. For a long moment, silence filled the village. The alien held her breath, knowing that everything, her future, her belonging, her hope, rested on this man's next words. The man stood still, his broad shoulders tense as he stared at the tall alien figure at the edge of his village. The people around him whispered, fear mixed with anger. Children hid behind their mothers, and old men clenched their fists on wooden tools. Yet the little girl held onto her father's arm tightly, her small voice breaking through the heavy silence. "Please, Father, she is not bad. She is lonely, just like us," she said, her eyes full of hope. The father's gaze shifted from his daughter to the alien. Her strange, glowing marks pulsed faintly. Her tall form looked strong yet weary. Her eyes carried both pain and longing. He did not speak, his silence louder than any shout. The alien lowered her head, expecting rejection, ready to turn and walk away into the dust again. But the girl would not let go. She stood firmly, shielding the alien with her little body. Her courage was small but powerful, and it forced her father to pause. Finally, the man spoke, his voice low and rough. "Why are you here?" he asked the alien. The question cut deep, for she herself did not fully know the answer. "I was cast out," she whispered, her voice carrying shame. "I have nowhere else to go." The villagers muttered louder, angered by the idea of sheltering, an outcast from another world. But the father raised his hand, and silence fell once more. His daughter tugged at him, her eyes pleading. "She needs us, Father, and we need her," she said. "You told me once that a home is made stronger when we help those who are alone." The man frowned, his jaw tightening, for he remembered saying those very words long ago to comfort his child. He turned back to the alien, his eyes narrowing. "You are dangerous," he said. "My people fear you. I fear you." The alien's heart sank, but she nodded slowly. "Yes, I am dangerous," she admitted. "But not to you, not to her." Her voice cracked as she added softly, "I only want a place where I belong." The man's silence returned, heavy and sharp. The villagers pressed closer, some demanding she be driven away, others warning of the danger she might bring. The little girl held her father's hand tightly and whispered, "Please don't send her away, not this time." The man looked at his daughter, at her innocent face so full of hope in a world that had given her so much loss. He saw his late wife in her eyes, the same kindness, the same belief in second chances. He took a deep breath, his silence breaking at last. "You may stay," he said, his voice firm, "but only for tonight." Gasps rose from the crowd, some in shock, others in protest. The alien's chest tightened, her heart beating wildly. For the first time in years, someone had not cast her aside, not completely. It was not full acceptance, but it was a chance, and a chance was more than she had ever hoped for. The father gestured for her to follow, his steps heavy as he led his daughter and the alien toward their small home at the edge of the village. The whispers of the villagers followed them, filled with doubt and anger, but the little girl skipped ahead, her hand still gripping the alien's, her smile bright despite the tension. Inside the simple wooden home, the man placed a cup of water on the table. "Drink," he said, his tone cold but not cruel. The alien hesitated, unused to such kindness, then lifted the cup with trembling hands. The water was simple, but to her, it tasted like life itself. The little girl sat beside her, watching with delight, as if she had brought home a long-lost friend. Night fell, the house quiet except for the crackle of fire. The man sat in silence, sharpening an old blade, his eyes flicking now and then to the alien. She sat by the fire, the girl curled up against her side, already asleep, her small fingers clutching at the alien's hand. The alien looked down at the child resting so trustingly against her, and something deep within her stirred, a feeling she thought she had lost forever, the feeling of being needed. The father finally spoke, breaking the long silence. "My daughter sees something in you," he said slowly, "but I do not trust you yet, and I cannot risk my people's safety." The alien nodded, her voice quiet but steady. "I do not ask for trust," she said, "only a chance to prove that I will not harm you." The firelight flickered, shadows dancing on the walls. The man studied her for a long time, then set his blade aside. "You will sleep under this roof. Tonight," he said. "But tomorrow I will decide whether you can stay longer." The alien lowered her head in silent acceptance, her heart torn between hope and fear. As the night deepened, she closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. She felt the warmth of the little girl beside her, and yet, outside the walls of this small home, she sensed movement, shadows shifting. In the distance, eyes watching from beyond the village. Her people, the ones who had cast her out, were not far, and they would not forgive her for finding humans to stand beside. She opened her glowing eyes in the dark, her chest tightening. She had found the edge of belonging, but danger was following close behind. The dawn crept slowly into the small wooden home, painting the walls with soft golden light. The alien sat awake by the fire, her glowing eyes fixed on the door. She had not slept much through the night, not with the feeling of eyes watching from the darkness outside. Every crackle of wood, every whisper of wind carried with it the weight of danger. Yet beside her, the little girl still slept peacefully, curled like a kitten against her side. The warmth of that tiny hand wrapped around her fingers kept her still, kept her anchored. The father stirred at last, rising with the weight of a man who had carried grief for too long. His gaze fell on the alien, his eyes unreadable. "You are still here," he said quietly. Not a question, but an observation. She nodded, her voice low. "I gave my word I would not leave without your judgment." The man studied her carefully, then shifted his eyes to his daughter, who stirred and smiled in her sleep. There was softness in his face for a moment, but it was gone quickly, replaced by silence. When the girl awoke, her laughter filled the room. "Good morning," she chirped, throwing her arms around the alien's arm without hesitation. The alien froze at the gesture, unused to such open affection. The father watched, his lips pressed tightly together. He knew the villagers would never allow this alien to stay. Yet the sight of his daughter's happiness struck deep into his heart. Later that morning, whispers filled the village like smoke. People gathered in corners, muttering warnings and curses. "She cannot stay," they said. "She will bring danger to us. Her kind has no place here." Another muttered. The alien heard their voices even from inside the small home, each word like a blade cutting into her. She wanted to leave, to spare the humans from their fear, but the child's hand holding hers would not let go. That afternoon, the father finally asked the question he had been holding back. "What happened to you?" His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with curiosity and caution. The alien hesitated, the memory heavy like a stone in her chest. "My people cast me out," she said slowly. "They said I was cursed, unworthy to stand among them." "The girl gasped, clutching tighter at her hand. "That's not fair," she whispered. The alien gave a bitter smile. "Fairness does not exist in exile." The father leaned forward, his voice sharper. "Why? What did you do?" The alien's eyes darkened, glowing faintly as she remembered. "I saved a human," she admitted, the words trembling from her lips. "My clan saw it as betrayal. They said no alien should risk their life for your kind." Her voice cracked, but I could not watch an innocent die. The silence that followed was heavy. The little girl stared at her with wide eyes full of admiration. "You're a hero," she said, as if the truth was that simple. The alien lowered her head. "A hero does not end up alone," she whispered. The father looked away, struggling with the weight of her words. He wanted to distrust her, to keep the wall of caution high, yet something about her pain was too real to ignore. Outside the home, the whispers of villagers grew louder, sharper. Some called for her removal, others feared her glowing marks, saying they were signs of dark power. The alien sat by the fire, her chest tight, feeling once again the old wound of rejection bleeding inside her. But then the girl placed her small hand on hers. "You belong with us now," she said. Her voice soft but steady. The alien's eyes shimmered, though she did not cry. Not yet. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched long across the land. The alien felt it again. The presence. The watching. The whispers of her past still chasing her. She rose suddenly, stepping outside into the cool evening air. Her eyes scanned the hills beyond the village, and she saw movement. Faint and distant. Figures cloaked in dark armor, standing still as stone, watching, waiting. Her heart pounded. Her exile had not freed her from their reach. They had followed her, and they would not allow her to find a new place among humans. The father came to the doorway, his voice stern. "What do you see?" The alien's jaw tightened, her eyes glowing brighter. "My past," she answered simply. "It is coming for me." That night, as the village settled into uneasy silence, the alien sat near the door, her back straight, her senses sharp. She knew the shadows were near, waiting for the moment to strike. Inside, the little girl clung to her father, whispering, "She will protect us, I know it." The man placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, torn between doubt and the strange, growing trust in the alien's words. The alien closed her eyes, but sleep did not come. Instead, she heard voices in the wind, memories of her clan, voices of those who had once called her sister, now calling her traitor. "You are not one of us," they whispered in her mind. "You are nothing." Her fists clenched, her chest burned with both anger and sorrow. She wanted to scream, to fight, to prove she was not nothing. But then she felt again the memory of the girl's hand in hers, warm and real. And for the first time, the voices of the past did not feel as strong as they once did. Still, the danger was close, closer than the humans knew. The alien looked out at the horizon where shadows gathered. Her exile was no longer hers alone. If the past came for her, it would come for the humans too. The night was heavy, the air thick with silence. Every sound in the village seemed louder than usual. The creak of wood, the rustle of wind, the cry of an animal far away. The alien sat by the doorway of the small house, her glowing eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the fields. She could feel them out there, her people, the ones who had cast her out, the ones who now hunted her. They were waiting, patient as predators, but she knew they would not wait for long. Inside, the little girl slept soundly, her head resting on her father's arm. The man kept his eyes open, his blade resting across his lap. Though he did not trust the alien fully, he could see the sharpness in her stance, the way her muscles stayed tense. She was not just a wanderer. She was a warrior, one who expected blood before dawn. Hours passed, then it came. The first sound was a low hum, unnatural, spreading across the night like a warning. Then a sharp cry echoed from the edge of the fields, followed by the hiss of alien weapons cutting through the air. The villagers awoke in terror, rushing outside with torches and crude tools. Shadows moved fast. Tall, armored figures with glowing eyes and cruel weapons in hand. "They've come," the alien whispered, rising to her full height, her body glowing faintly with power. The father gripped his blade and stepped outside, his voice steady. "Stay inside," he told his daughter, but the girl clung to the alien's hand, refusing to let go. "Don't leave me," she begged, her eyes wide with fear. The alien looked down at her, torn between battle and the warmth of that small hand, but she gently placed the child into her father's arms. "Protect her," she said firmly. "I will face them." The father's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then the alien stepped forward, out into the heart of the chaos. The village was alive with fire and shouts, the enemy figures circling like wolves. One of them stepped into the torchlight, his armor jagged, his voice cold. "You were warned," he said to her, his words cutting like a blade. "You turned your back on us, and now you hide among humans? You shame us all." The alien's chest burned, anger and pain twisting together. "I saved an innocent life," she growled, her voice shaking the air. "If that shames me, then I will wear it proudly." The enemy snarled and raised his weapon. But she moved before he could strike. Her body, though weary from exile, still carried the strength of her bloodline. She struck with speed, knocking him back into the dirt, sparks flying from his armor. The villagers gasped, frozen in fear and awe. They had never seen such power, never seen someone fight with such fire. But the battle was only beginning. More enemies surged forward, their weapons glowing, their strikes fast and merciless. The alien fought them one by one, her body moving with both grace and fury. She blocked their blows, countered with strikes that sent them stumbling. Yet she was only one and they were many. The father joined the fight, swinging his blade with human strength. He struck one enemy across the leg, forcing it to stumble back. Though weaker than the alien warriors, his courage burned bright. The villagers too began to fight, their fear mixing with desperation. Together they struck with torches, stones, anything they could hold. The alien fought beside them, her movements fierce, protecting those who could. Not protect themselves, but the enemy pressed harder, their leader stepping forward once more. He pointed at her with a jagged weapon, his voice dripping with venom. "You do not belong here," he hissed. "You belong to nothing." The words cut deep. The same wound reopened again, but then she heard it. A voice behind her, small and trembling yet strong. "Yes, she does." The little girl shouted, standing in the doorway, her eyes burning with defiance. "She belongs with us." The alien froze, her chest tightening. For years she had carried the weight of being unwanted, unloved, cast aside. But here was this tiny human child, declaring before warriors and villagers alike that she belonged. The strength of those words filled her like fire. She let out a cry and struck forward with renewed fury, her body glowing brighter than before. Her fists and kicks landed with crushing force, driving the enemy warriors back. For the first time they faltered, their leader stumbling under her rage. The villagers rallied behind her, the father standing at her side. Together they pushed the enemy back into the shadows. The night echoed with the clash of steel, the hiss of alien energy, and the cries of a people who refused to surrender. At last the enemy retreated, their leader's voice echoing as he vanished into the dark. "This is not over," he spat. "She will bring ruin to you all." Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of burning torches and the heavy breaths of the weary. The villagers stood in shock, staring at the alien who had fought to protect them. The father lowered his blade, his chest rising and falling. He turned to look at her, his eyes filled with something new, not just caution but respect. The little girl rushed forward, throwing her arms around the alien's waist. "You saved us," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. The alien knelt slowly, holding the child close, her body trembling from both exhaustion and the weight of belonging. For the first time in years, she felt not like an outcast, but like someone needed, someone wanted. But deep inside, she knew the danger was far from over. The enemy would return, stronger and angrier, and when they did, she would have to decide how far she was willing to go to protect this fragile hope of a home. The village was quiet after the attack, yet the silence was not peace. It was the heavy silence that comes after fear, when people whisper to each other in corners and avoid meeting one another's eyes. Fires smoldered, houses bore scars of the battle, and the villagers carried the weight of what they had seen. They had watched an alien fight for them, bleed for them, defend them as if she were one of their own. But fear runs deep, and fear does not vanish with one battle. The alien sat near the edge of the settlement, her body still aching from the clash. Her glowing marks dimmed slightly, the fire inside her flickering but not gone. Beside her, the little girl leaned against her side, clutching her hand tightly. "You were amazing," the girl said softly, "like a hero from the old stories." The alien lowered her head, her voice quiet. "Heroes do not frighten the people they save," she murmured. The child shook her head firmly, her small voice full of certainty. "You don't frighten me, and you don't frighten Father anymore either." The father stood a short distance away, sharpening his blade with slow, deliberate strokes, his eyes lifted now and then toward the alien, watching her, measuring her. He had seen her fight, seen her risk herself for his people, for his daughter, and though doubt still clung to him, Something deeper was growing in its place. Respect. That night he sat across from her at the fire. The little girl nestled between them. "You could have run," he said at last, his voice low. "You could have left us to fight for ourselves, but you didn't." The alien met his eyes, her voice steady. "I ran once before, when they turned on me," she said. "I will not run again." For the first time, the father nodded, a small gesture, but enough. It was the beginning of trust. Days passed and the alien began to help around the village. She carried heavy loads that men struggled with, repaired roofs with steady hands, and watched over the fields at night. At first, the villagers avoided, her whispering behind her back. But slowly their fear softened, replaced by cautious curiosity. Children peeked from behind fences, watching her glowing marks shimmer in the sunlight. Some even dared to approach, laughing when she lifted them high into the air with ease. The little girl would beam with pride each time, as if showing the village that the alien was already part of their family. Yet trust is fragile, and shadows linger. The alien knew her. People would return, stronger than before. Each night she stood watch, her senses sharp, her heart heavy. She did not fear for herself anymore, but for the humans who had given her a chance. She could not allow them to pay the price for her past. One evening, as the sun set in crimson light, the father spoke again. "My daughter is right about one thing," he said quietly. "You are not the enemy she fears, nor the stranger I expected." He paused, his eyes dark with memory. "Since her mother died, I have carried silence in this house," he continued. "But since you arrived," she laughs again. "She sleeps without fear." His voice lowered, rough with emotion. "You give her something I could not. Hope." The alien's chest tightened, her hands trembling. Hope had been a word long denied to her, a dream she had, buried under the ashes of exile. Now here it was, spoken by a human man who once looked at her with only suspicion. That night, the little girl pressed herself between them as they sat by the fire. "You see?" she whispered sleepily, her words slurred with drowsiness. "You're like my mom now. I always wanted a mom." The alien froze, her glowing eyes wide. She had been called many things: traitor, exile, curse. But never that. The father looked at her quietly, not denying the child's words. Instead, he gave a slow nod, as if he too had begun to see her not as an outsider but as something closer. The alien laid awake long after the child had fallen asleep. Her heart pounded with emotions she did not know how to name. Belonging, affection, the fragile roots of family taking hold in her heart. She whispered to herself, almost afraid of the sound of her own words. "I am not alone anymore." But the world beyond the village was not so gentle. At the edge of the fields, unseen in the shadows, her people watched once again. The leader of the exiles clenched his jaw, his eyes glowing with fury. "She protects them now," he growled. "She dares to live as one of them." Another warrior bowed his head. "Shall we strike tonight?" The leader shook his head slowly, a cruel smile spreading. "No. Let her grow comfortable. Let her taste belonging," he said. "Then we will tear it from her hands." Back in the village, the alien stirred, sensing something in the wind. Her glowing eyes flickered, scanning the darkness. She felt the storm gathering, though she did not yet know when it would break. For now she had warmth. She had a child's laughter. She had the father's quiet respect. But she also knew shadows were patient, and shadows always returned. The storm came without warning. One moment, the village was calm under the silver glow of the moon, and the next, the ground shook with the heavy march of armored feet. The alien had felt it before anyone else, her chest tightening, her glowing marks burning as if her past had reached out to seize her. She stood at the edge of the fields, her eyes fixed on the dark horizon. Figures emerged, dozens of them, armored warriors moving in silence, their leader at the front, his cruel smile sharp under the torchlight. The alarm spread through the village. Men rushed from their homes, women gathered their children, fear rising like smoke. The father gripped his blade tightly, his eyes finding the alien. "They've come for you," he said, his voice low but steady. She nodded, her voice heavy with both guilt and determination. Yes, but they will not leave without a fight. The little girl clung to her father's side, her eyes wide. You won't let them take her, will you? She whispered. Her father bent down, brushing her hair gently. No one will take her from us, he said firmly, though inside his heart pounded with fear. The enemy leader stepped forward, his voice loud and sharp. Outcast, he called, his words echoing through the night. You defy us again, standing with these fragile humans pretending you belong. The alien stepped forward, her tall form glowing faintly in the moonlight. I do belong, she said firmly, her voice carrying strength. Here, with them. The villagers gasped, hearing the defiance in her words. The enemy leader snarled, raising his jagged weapon. Then you will die with them. The battle began in a storm of fire and steel. Alien warriors surged into the village, their weapons cutting through wood and stone. The villagers fought with everything they had, axes, hammers, torches. The father stood at the front, his blade flashing, his strength driven not by anger, but by the will to protect his daughter. The alien fought beside him, her body moving with fury and grace, every strike filled with both rage and love. She had been denied belonging, denied family, but here and now, she would fight for it with her life. The clash shook the ground, cries of pain and fury filling the air. The little girl hid inside the small house, peeking through cracks, tears running down her face as she watched the people she loved fighting for survival. She whispered to herself over and over, "Please be safe, please don't leave me." The alien struck down enemy after enemy, her glowing marks blazing brighter with each strike. But the enemy leader was stronger than the rest, his blows heavy, his speed sharp. Their duel tore through the center of the village, sparks flying as weapon met weapon. "You are nothing," he shouted as he forced her back. Her chest burned, her body screamed in pain, but she answered with fire in her voice. "I am not nothing, I am theirs." The father fought at her side, striking at openings, his courage like steel. Together, they pushed the leader back, though every strike came with risk. At last, the leader raised his weapon high, his voice a roar. This ends now, but before his blade could fall, the little girl's voice pierced the battle. "No!" she screamed, running into the chaos, her tiny body throwing itself between them. The alien's heart stopped, fear greater than any battle surging through her. She leapt forward, shielding the child with her own body, taking the brunt of the strike across her side. Pain ripped through her, her glowing marks flaring, but she did not fall. Instead, she stood taller, her arms wrapping protectively around the girl, her eyes blazed brighter than fire, her voice shaking the ground itself. "You will not touch her." The villagers, inspired by the sight, rallied with renewed strength. They surged forward, striking at the enemy with every ounce of power they had left. The father roared, driving his blade deep into one warrior, pushing them back step by step. The alien fought with fury unlike before, every strike fueled not by survival but by love. The battle turned, the enemy faltered, their leader stumbling under the combined strength of human and outcast. At last, the alien struck him down, her glowing hand crashing against his chest, sending him sprawling into the dirt. He gasped, rage twisting his face. "This changes nothing," he spat. "They will never truly accept you." But the alien stood tall, the little girl clutching her hand, the father at her side. "They already have," she said, her voice steady. The enemy leader staggered back, calling for retreat. One by one, the warriors vanished into the night, leaving the village scarred but standing. Silence fell again, broken only by heavy breaths and the crackle of fire. The villagers turned to the alien, their fear softened, their eyes filled now with something different. Gratitude. She had fought not only for herself, but for them. The father stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are no outcast here," he said quietly. "Not anymore." The little girl clung to her tightly, whispering through her tears, "You're my mom now, no one can take you away." The alien held her close, her body trembling, her heart full in a way it had never been before. She had fought for belonging, and in the flames of battle she had found it. Yet even in victory she knew the war was not over. The enemy would return, their hatred burning brighter than before, but now she was not alone. Now she had something worth fighting for, worth dying for. Family. The village was quiet again, though this time the silence felt different. It was not the silence of fear, but the silence that follows survival, when hearts are tired but still beating. The fires had been put out, the wounded tended and the fallen mourned. The people moved slowly, their eyes heavy with exhaustion but also with wonder, for they had seen something they had never imagined, an alien who fought not as their enemy, but as their protector in the Yao. Alien stood at the center of the village, her glowing marks dim but steady. She was bruised, scarred, her body aching from the battle, yet she stood tall. The little girl clung to her side, refusing to let go, her small hands gripping tightly as if afraid the alien might vanish. The father stood close as well, his blade still at his side, his eyes softer now than they had ever been. The villagers gathered around, whispering not with fear this time, but with gratitude. One of the elders stepped forward, leaning on his cane, his wrinkled eyes studying her. "You fought for us," he said slowly, his voice rough with age. "You bled for us, though we are not your kind. Why?" The alien lowered her head, her voice quiet but steady. "Because you gave me something I had lost," she said. "A place to belong." The villagers exchanged glances, their fear melting into respect. The elder nodded, bowing his head. "Then, you are welcome among us," he said, and the others murmured their agreement. For the first time in her life, the alien felt the weight of exile lift from her shoulders. She was no longer just an outcast wandering the dust. Here, in this fragile, human village, she had been given a chance to stand, to fight, to belong. Days passed and life began to rebuild. The alien worked beside the humans, carrying wood, helping rebuild walls, watching over the fields at night. Children laughed as they followed her, daring each other to touch her glowing hands. Some of the women brought her food, shy smiles replacing fearful glances. The men nodded at her with respect, their shoulders less tense when she walked by. Step by step, she was becoming part of them. Inside the small home, the bond grew stronger. The little girl never left her side, clinging to her as if afraid she might vanish. Each night she would curl against her, whispering, "Don't leave me," before sleep took her. And each night the alien whispered back, "Never." The father watched quietly, his silence no longer sharp but thoughtful. He had carried grief for so long, a silence heavy with loss. But now, his house was filled again, with laughter, with warmth, with life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the fields glowed gold, the father spoke at last. "You have given her something I could not," he said softly, his eyes fixed on the little girl who was playing nearby. "You gave her back her laughter." The alien turned to him, her voice low. "And you gave me something I thought I would never have again. A home." For a long moment, silence hung between them. But this time it was a gentle silence, the silence of two souls carrying wounds, slowly finding healing together. But even in peace, shadows lingered. The alien knew her people would not stop. Their leader's promise still echoed in her mind. "This is not over," he had said. She looked out at the horizon each night, her senses sharp, her body ready. The threat of war was still there, waiting. Yet now she was no longer afraid because she knew she would not face it alone. One night, the little girl crawled into her lap, her eyes shining in the firelight. "Do you know what I wished for?" she asked softly. The alien tilted her head. "What did you wish for?" The girl smiled, her voice small but steady. "I wished for a mom," she whispered. "And I think my wish came true." The alien's chest tightened, her glowing eyes shimmering as she wrapped her arms around the child. Her voice shook as she whispered back, "And I wished for a family, and my wish came true too." The father watched from across the fire, his eyes soft, his lips pressing into the faintest smile. The grief he carried had not vanished, but it no longer crushed him. He could see something new forming. Something fragile but strong, something worth protecting. The alien, once a wanderer with nothing, had found everything she had been denied. Not riches, not power, not glory, but a home, a father's respect, a child's love, a place where she was no longer outcast, but simply family. And though the shadows of war still waited beyond the horizon, she knew she was ready. For now she had something greater than fear. She had a reason to fight, a reason to stay, a reason to belong. As the night settled over the village, the little girl curled against her side, whispering one last sleepy word, "Mom." The alien closed her eyes, holding the child close, her heart finally at peace. She had searched for belonging across the stars, and at last, she had found it here. In the simplest of places, with the simplest of people, in the warmth of a new home.